So for those who don't know me, okay, my name is Adam. I'm basically an architect by profession, and also I do technical trainings out of my passion. So in that way, I've been working on DevOps from quite some time. So keeping it aside, what's more important for us to learn from this session is, like I said, first we will understand what is the expectation of an organization as of now. So what I was trying to tell you is, for an organization, what they are looking at is delivering their product or whatever the service that they have to deliver should be continuous. But when we are focusing about delivering everything continuously, we also have to keep our interest on quality. Because now, if you are delivering something which you had delivered earlier in 2 months, now you want to deliver the same thing in 1 month. Now, definitely, it doesn't mean that the quality has to be compromised, right? So now I was talking about this Amazon sale. Now, if they say, okay, as soon as something goes out of stock, you have to immediately get that on the page, or if a new product is added, I have to immediately add. Just because we are rushing, what if the images that is being displayed on the product is not of the good quality, or just like how I'm talking about, what if the network is not good? Will you be still happy? No. The same way, when the pages that's been loaded, if it's not of a good quality, then there is no point of delivering it continuously, right? So that's where an organization also have to focus on how do they ensure the quality will be always higher when they are delivering everything continuously. Okay. Now, when we are talking about quality and continuously delivering, the other biggest problem that happens is cost. Because if you want to get everything done faster and with a better quality, definitely I have to do it only by adding more people or more resources in terms of some kind of system or server. Then what will happen? If I add more people, then it is going to add more cost to the production or more cost to the maintenance. So definitely, when the cost keeps increasing, what will happen? The return on investment for the companies will be getting reduced. So this is what you keep seeing in the organizations called as recession. So recession is very simple. Okay, from their term, they would have invested on some area of the business. When they see that they are not getting the exact benefit out of it, then they are going to make sure that there is some cost cutting, which is what they call it as recession. So that is why for every organization, they are thinking about, okay, if I invest a X amount of money in something, how is that I'm going to make more out of it within a given time? So that's what every organization is looking at right now. Now, in addition to this, there is one more thing which an organization focuses on, is something what we call it as outage. So typically this will be, again, whether it's a service based or a product based. Now, in order for us to work continuously on delivering faster things, now what will happen? There might be some problem anywhere in terms of machine. Like, let's say there was a network issue, or there was a power issue, or let's say you want to upgrade one of the software. Now, when you're going to do all these things, what will happen is, typically the complete system has to be stopped. When I say system, I'm not telling about one server. It's almost a group of things has to be stopped, right? Now, what will happen in that way? The complete productivity will be stopped, right? Even though if I say I'm going to stop 1 hour some machine, all the people who are going to work on that machine will definitely be impacted. Now, because of that, what will happen? Ideally, it is going to be an issue for an organization, because now think the same thing what I was talking about Facebook or Amazon. If they say, hey, there is some upgrade I have to do because I see that there are more and more people joining and using the website, so there is a lot of load, so I have to do some kind of network change or add more machines or fix some problem. So because of that, wait for half an hour, we will update. So do you think if they say that the business will be better? No. So that is where whatever problems that they are trying to fix should be done in a lesser time. So that is where an organization needs that if any kind of such a problem is happening, how do we proactively find it and fix it, so that the total time that we take
to make sure everything is up and running again will be reduced. So that is what we call it as outages. So the time that we take to tell a outage, like power outage, network outage, or software outage, then we need to bring that time, because only when we bring it down, an organization will be benefited. Okay. So now this is in general what every organization is looking at. Okay. Now, post this, what will happen is, okay, now when a company has to get this, now what is that a company is expecting? Because now who is going to do all those things? The people within the company have to do this. So this is where the whole organization, in terms of those people who are focusing about the software development, okay, so I'm not talking about people who are not involved in development, because if you take a company, there will be a lot of people. So majorly you can divide them into someone called engineering group, and then you will have the HR group, and then you will have the marketing group, right? So that way the main focus is those who will be making their hands dirty in terms of working on the SDLC. So they can be divided into two groups. One is development group, the other one is operations group. So what do you mean by development group? So development group means, it doesn't mean only developers. All those people who are part of developing a software. Okay, so that is where you would be able to put the programmers or developers in it, QA engineers in it, and there will be people like release managers who will be talking to the customers and to the people within the product team to understand and how to deliver. And then you might have build engineers who will be helping you to build the product proper, and there will be support engineers who will be taking care of certain deployments later and support if there is any application issue. And in order to drive all those things, there might be some people like program managers. So now anyone who is focusing towards delivering a software is what we call it as development group. On the other side, now if you say, okay, if I say a SDLC, only does it mean that a developer and a QA and support engineer should be there? Now they focus only on developing the software and testing and releasing it. But in order for them to work on all those things, they need a lot of machines, right? So who is going to take care of that machines? So that is where we have the other side who is going to take care of the administration. Okay, so that way now operation groups is nothing but those people who will be taking care of the machine or the application which is there. Okay, is the voice clear yet?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this way when we talk about the other group, which is operation, who will be part of the operation? Majorly anyone who is going to take care of some machine or some application. That is what we call them as operation group. Now who and all will be in the operation group? System administrators, network administrators, middleware administrators, storage administrators, or in some companies you might also have someone who will do exclusively only deployment. So that way, if your role or current responsibility is somewhere you were taking care of a machine, or if you were taking care of an application, you will be part of the operations group. Okay, now this is what we were working so far. So now any one of you, those who are already working, you will be part of any one of the site, right? Either you will be part of the development group or you will be part of the operation group. So now for a company, with the goals that I was telling in the previous slide, and with the people that we are going to be there, differentiated into different groups in a high level, how is that a company can achieve their business goal? Okay, now a company can achieve a business goal only if every one of us individually focus on doing more work than what we were doing, right? So typically it is like, if the company has to deliver faster, who should be working now? So it's again like a factory. Now let's take a factory where we produce a car. Now a car doesn't just come out by itself, right? So first there needs to be a raw material which has to be forged, and we have to cast it into a different or a specific shape. and then there will be one engineer who will be fitting an engine, and then there will be one engineer who will be fitting some kind of door, and there will be one guy who will be fitting wheels, and there will be one guy who will put interior, and then there will be one guy who will paint it, right? So like this, there will be different set of people who will be working one after the other. Now, for me, if I say, hey, I have a goal where every day I need to make sure 10 cars are coming out. So for that, who should be working? So typically, all the people, right from forging the iron to the person who is kind of painting and delivering it, everyone should work continuously, right? Even if one guy doesn't work continuously, my car is not going to come out. So that way, in an software also, when we go through SDLC, all of us have to work. That means if a customer is giving us a requirement, developer has to continuously do development, and then QA also test it accordingly, and then build engineer should build it, and then support engineer should make sure it is deployed properly, and for that whatever machines and network is needed, that has also be taken care by administrator. So in ideally, every one of us have to start focusing on automation. So that is where now the solution what the company is looking at is how do we automate everything. Okay, so now who has to automate? Whatever the engineers that we have seen so far who are working directly or indirectly on a SDLC, everyone has to do the work whatever they are doing automatically. So by doing automatically, what will happen? You will save a lot of time, and that is what we need because we can deliver everything faster. But when I talk about automation, so the automation has to be done from both the parts. So what you see the diagrammatic representation is, this is the development group and the operation group. So now both the groups have to think about automating whatever they are working on. Okay, but what happens is, it's not just that any one of them should work, but now, like I was talking about the car, if I have to make sure that everything is automated, now I need to make sure that there is some kind of pipeline which is created. Like if you think about the factory, there will be some kind of conveyor which will bring the material and it will be moving it from everyone's place, right? So that one person finish the work, they will put it on their conveyor and it will be going to the next person to do it. The same way, now in a software, if I want to deliver my product at the end to the customer, it needs to begin from developer, QA, and then the program managers, build engineer, and then it comes to deployment engineers and then support engineers. So it has to go through everyone, right? So the automation which is done by 1% is not sufficient. So we need to make sure automation is done by everyone and it is collaborated. Okay, because releasing a software is a collaborative effect by so many engineers, which we were looking at the second slide. So that is where the solution what the company is expecting is, each and every one of us have to work together collaboratively in such a way that we focus into more and more automation. Okay, now all these things are possible only when we communicate between each other saying, hey, this is what I am trying to automate, this is what I am going to deliver, are you ready to take that and do your work? So that if that guy completes, he should be able to communicate to the next person. Okay, now this is the challenge what companies are facing, because so far as an individual what we were working is, there is one developer, his duty is only to write code, he will never think about anything else. Then what is QA going to do? QA will only say that, okay, if you give me your product, I will test. And what about the rest? Nothing. Okay, to do this, if you go to the administrator, they would say that if you give me a machine, I will make sure that everything is available and nothing after that. What about support engineer? He will say, okay, if you have installed everything, I will monitor, but nothing beyond it. So this way, every one of us were working in silos, which means we have our own responsibility. We were just saying, okay, I completed my code, my work is done. I completed my testing, my work is done. I made sure machine is available, my work is done. So this way, when we are working in silos, we will not achieve the goal, because as a company, to get the delivery faster and the quality better, every one of us have to collaborate so that less what companies were thinking is, rather than working individually, what we need to do is we need to work collaboratively. Okay, so that is what an organization started to think. So what kind of collaboration that here is, the company now wants us to work in a culture where we should not think that I am from the development group or I am from operation group. Okay, so we need to put a bridge between that and make sure that we will collaboratively automate all the things which is needed for our organization to deliver everything faster. So this way, what will happen now is, if you are a development group member, then don't just think only about the work what you are doing. Think what are the responsibilities that you can take beyond it. Okay, if you are part of the operations group, don't think of only your current responsibility. Think what are the things you can do beyond it. So that way, now, if you are a developer, you should not think only about writing code. You should think, is there any other way that can I help in improving the quality? If you are a QA engineer, you should not think only about testing. You should think, okay, for me to do testing, I need to do deployment, right? So why can't I do the deployment by myself and then test, so that you are taking more responsibilities? The same way, if you are a support engineer, you should not think about only taking care of the application after it has been installed. Why is that? You can think about installing things or configuring things by yourself, and how better can you monitor whatever that you are taking care of, right? The same way, if you go to the administrators, they should not be thinking about only when the requirement comes I will set up. But if you can think in such a way that, okay, if there is a release which is going to come, for that, what are the developers requirement, what is the QA's requirements, and if you can help them with the infrastructure automated, then you are also doing automation and helping more with the organization to achieve their goal. Okay, so that is what is the solution what a company is looking at. So very simple, if you look at now, every organization is looking at where the people who are working within the organization on SDLC, rather than working on one responsibility and automating only that, you need to think and be aligned with the business goals of the company and try to take more responsibilities. So that is what we call it as DevOps. So as the name says, so you're not focusing only on the development group or the operation group. You have to think in such a way wherein you should be able to do certain tasks on the development side, and at the same way you should be able to do certain things on the operation side. Okay, so now if your responsibility is getting increased where you can do both of them, then the way that you are working is what we call it as DevOps. Okay, your voice is not clear. Hello. Can you type in the chat if there's any question? So let me just repeat it again. So now, if you understand, DevOps is not just a position, but it is the expectation from a company where whatever the people within the company they were working, okay, now what we have to do now is, in order for the organization to help to achieve their business, now I should be thinking of doing things beyond it. Okay, now let's understand that first. Okay, I will talk about what and all you can do internally, whether you are on the development group or the operation. Now what is that I'm trying to tell you is, company is asking, like, what is that we have to do is, guys, I'll talk about all of them little later. Okay, just try to first understand from an overview. If you are in the operation group or if you are in the development group, what company is expecting is, rather than focusing on the area or the business group where you will be, You should think of the other side of the business, right? So guys, I'm trying to walk you through. Just bear with me when I say I'll tell you later. Okay. So the first thing I'm trying to do is giving you an understanding on what is company's expectation, what is DevOps. Next, I will talk about what and all is there in DevOps and each of the role, what you're going to do, what is that you're going to do. Okay. So that's what the whole intention. So let me not jump into the fourth slide, what you're talking about. So I'll walk about everything. Just be with me, and whatever that I'm talking about now, let me know if there is any question. Okay. And I'll make sure I'll answer all the questions that you're asking in the next slide. Okay. So now the question again goes back is, if you are working as an IT engineer, so far you were taking care of some work in the development group or operation group. But now what is company expecting? Don't just do only that, but can you do something on the other side of the group, right? So that if you are a system admin, think about how you can do deployment by yourself. Think about how you can do monitoring by yourself, right? If you are a storage administrator, think about how you can install and set up the storage by yourself. And not just that, is there something which you can help in testing? Is there something which you can help in releasing? Okay, so what is that we will see, but the focus for a company is what are the things that you can take additionally. That is the whole focus what a company is looking at. To put it again in a very simple way, if you are hiring a maid for our house, what is that we are expecting nowadays? The maid should be able to cook, she should be able to clean the house, wash the clothes, everything she should be able to do. Okay, right? Only then what we say is, okay, rather than I pay you for only one work, if you can do things of together, it's a cost effective thing for me also, right? So that is how we try to tell them. So rather than hiring three maids, one for cooking, one for cleaning, and one for washing, you will typically hire one person to do everything. That is the same expectation. What is company doing is, rather than having individual people who will focus on only one work, they want us to focus on many things. Now, what to focus? That is on more responsibilities, which is beyond what you have been doing. Like I say, developer, don't think only by stopping development. There is something after that. What is that? You need to understand. So you can help in testing, you can help in deployment, you can help in monitoring. There could be a lot of things. Same way, if you are a QA, don't think only about testing, but after testing or before testing, there are works like how do you set up your own environment for testing, how do you deploy them, how do you make sure quality is better or release is better. So that is how everyone will be focusing on that. So that is what the expectation is the company doing. Okay, so now understand, DevOps means it is a culture. So culture is nothing but they want us to take more responsibilities so that company will be benefited. Okay, so there is nothing called as a DevOps engineer as such. So any one of us, if we want to take up more responsibility so that we are thinking on the business goal for the organization, then we will call ourselves as working in the culture of DevOps. So that way, each and every one of us who are working in an IT, if you focus about more and more responsibilities and more automation, then we are going to call ourselves as people who are focusing or working in the culture of DevOps. Okay, is that clear first? Is that clear first? So now if you understand, each and every one of us have to focus on doing something more. That is the very simple expectation from every company. Okay, so now who should do? So this is where I said, if you are part of development group or if you are part of operation group, definitely you have to think about working on something additionally. Okay, so what is that? We will still see further. But now the company's expectation is you are going to do more and more work. Okay, now what is that I can work, right? So now if a company is hiring a person, they are keeping in the mind, okay, now this guy who is going to come and work in my team, If I want him to work towards the DevOps culture, there are certain characteristics that I want him to meet. Again, when I was talking about the maid concept, okay, if I'm going to hire a maid, I'm not expecting my maid should be an expert in cooking, expert in washing, or expert in cleaning. But typically, I would expect she has knowledge on everything, and provided if I ask her to do something, she would be doing it, right? So the same way, now, if you are going to a company where the company's expectation is you should be working in the culture called DevOps, there are certain characteristics which they expect from you. Okay, so characteristics doesn't mean that, oh, you know some tool, you will become a DevOps engineer, or you can call yourself that I have worked in DevOps. No, it talks about communication, it talks about collaboration, it talks about automation, right? So that's what they are going to look at. So in Crisp, the first thing what the organization is now looking at a person is, are you a generalist? What do you mean by generalist is, now, so far you were calling in your resume that I'm a proficient developer, or I'm a proficient QA engineer, or a proficient system admin, right? You're going to put only that, right? See, you can put so many tasks inside it, but from a higher level, you're talking about only one area, right? But what a company wants is, rather than focusing only on that, how many different things can you help? Like, again, I'm putting the example of a maid. Now, if a maid says, I am a proficient cooker, okay, or I'm a proficient person who can wash, right, clothes. So now that's not what they're looking at. So they are looking at someone in the profile who will say, hey, I know cooking, I know washing, and I can also do cleaning. That is what we call it as generalist. Because so what I was trying to tell is, if I ask my maid to do some work which is not being done now, she should be able to ready to do. So that is the same thing what I'm talking about. You might be working only as a developer or only as a system admin. Now suddenly I will come and tell you, hey, I want you to help the developer so that he can set up his machine automatically. Now you should not say that I will not do or I don't know. You should be like, okay, I am going to do it. Tell me what is that, right? That is what we call it as generalist. Okay, so typically now if you understand that nature or behavior is what they are doing, that is the first one they are going to look into your resume or when they talk to you. So you should not talk that I worked on only one thing. I am some person where I know so many things and I'm ready to work on couple of things, which is what I was telling you in a previous slide, where if you're in the operations group, you should say that I'm ready to do something on the development group. Okay, now what is that? Still I didn't come into it. So try to understand. So that's what the first expectation. The second expectation is automation. So now let me go back to the maid concept. If my maid says, Bhai, I can do cleaning, I can do cooking, and I can wash, okay, but does she have time to do all those things, right? Let's, can you mute Hari Krishna? So the point here is, can your maid do everything in a day? No, it's not possible. So that is where she has to do something automatically, which means now if you ask her to wash, if you give her a washing machine, she can do everything better, right? The same way, if I have to clean, then I have to give her some kind of vacuum cleaner or some stuff through which she can do it faster. The same way for cooking, I have to give her some utensils, some mixer grinder, all those things which by which she can do everything faster. That's what we call it as automation. The same way now, if you say that, hey, I'm a system admin, but rather than focusing only on system, I can also help in configuring and I can also help in deployment. You can tell, but how is that you are going to do? Because if you are already taking care of systems in 8 hours, if I also ask you to take care of deployment, do you think you will work for 16 hours? No. So within the same 8 hours, you have to do everything. How is it possible? It is possible only if whatever work you are already doing in 8 hours, you have to reduce it so that you can take additional work. That is possible through automation. So this is where now you should know how to automate your current work and what are the things that you can automate. So that is where the next point which comes is best practice. So you should be knowing how is that you can automate in a better way, right? Again, try to understand. It's not just so simple where, oh, you did one work, I can do another work. Now, how can you keep doing more and more work? Are you going to sit whole day and work? No. So you need to know what is the best way in doing some work and automate it so that you can reduce the time what you are doing and you can take more responsibility, and on the other way you are going to also make sure that it is cost effective, which is what we call it as operational excellence. Okay, now this is also as important, which people don't think about. If I ask you, okay, like for example, if I go and buy a Mercedes car, or for me if I even buy my Enfield, now buying is not a problem, but after that maintenance is going to be so high, I have to spend so much of money on it. The same way for an organization, if I ask you, hey, I have to deliver something, guys, so can you help me by taking additional responsibility? If you say, sir, yes, I can do that. Okay, so there is a tool available, or there is a best way that we can do, for which we need to buy so many machines, and let me do it. But end of the day, if you have achieved the time in delivering everything faster, but if you have put in so much of cost in buying that software, or after that if you're going to put too much of money in maintaining, then what will happen? Ideally, again, it's going to bring the cost. Maybe time you have reduced, but the cost is increased. So now will you think company will be happy? Company will still say that it is not at all of use. So that way, guys, again, can you go on mute? So that way, company also have to now focus where you are not just automating your work, but you are also doing a better way of maintenance, so that whatever you do should be simple and you should be doing it by yourself. You should not be going to someone else to ask it to maintain, right? See, like I said, if I ask my maid to do the cooking and I got her all the best things in the market, like let's say that I bought her a mixer and a grinder, she used it and she cooked very well, and she also got time to wash the clothes. Now because she used the mixer and grinder, she has to wash it now, correct? Now what if she says, okay, I don't know cleaning, so why don't you just ask one more person to clean? So now if I do, my cost is increasing. Definitely I will say, why don't you do something like have a dishwasher, put it up and clean everything faster? So that's the kind of thing what an organization is looking at. Okay, so it's not just about taking more responsibility, you should be able to automate it, and after it how effectively you are maintaining, that is also is important. Okay, and the last point which they are expecting as an organization from us is resilience. Now what is resilience? So this is more about communication. Now typically how we work in our organization is, if there is a problem, we just blame it on someone else. Hey, my machine is not working, go and talk to IT engineer, go and talk to system admin. That's what. If QA says product is not testing, they will say, I don't know, hey, I try to run the test, testing is not happening, that's it, my job is done. Now who's responsible for that? So that is where each one of us should take the responsibility to make sure that you are delivering everything until the end. For that, you need to bring everything to closure. So that is what we call it as resilience. Resilience means if there is a problem, you have to bring it back to the same position what it was. So you need to be proactive. So that way, every one of us should take responsibility and communicate with others to get the problem solved. So we should not just say that this is not my problem, like my maid. If she sees that only in my flat there is no power, she should not be just sitting, and end of the day she should not say, sir, I was just sitting because there was no power, I don't know what to do, it's your problem. Does it make you happy? Or if she says, sir, I know there was some problem with your flat, please tell me if there is an electrician, and then you call electrician will come and she will just help him to get it done. So what is that she did? Nothing, but she coordinated, right? That way she's making sure everything is coming back. Now that kind of responsibility is what a company is expecting as part of DevOps. Okay, clear? Okay, so now comes to the next point. So now we understood what is the characteristic that organization is expecting from each one of us when they are moving towards the DevOps, because it is not the individual, the whole company wants to move towards the DevOps culture. Okay, now that is where what are the things we can do. So now see, DevOps is not something different, it is going to be added on top of what we are doing. So that way each one of us are working in one area or the other area, like I was talking about the development group or the operation group. So that way now DevOps is not something to tell, okay, you are developing, write code in a better way. That is not about DevOps, that is what your regular work is going to be. But what DevOps talks about is what are the best practices that you are not doing which you can do. Okay, so like I said, a maid, if she knows cooking very well, I would still say don't use all handmade things, because it will take time for me. Go and use some automated things which are available, which will help us to save time. So that way, if you are not following it, follow it is what we are going to do. So that is where in the DevOps there are some best practices which will solve many problems, and not just solve problems, it integrates certain things. So that is where the major areas where DevOps focuses is something like continuous development, where from the requirement developers will be able to write code better and they will be able to give it to the QA. Wherein if you want to take the code whatever developer is writing and give it to the QA, then you have to do something called as continuous integration. Okay, and then once the developers are writing code and you are integrating and giving it to QA should focus to test it continuously, not just that, okay, I tested, fine, I'm going to give you continuously. So adapt to a new concept or a method where you can do testing continuously, right? So this is where we need to focus on continuous testing. Now, after continuous testing, if you want to do the deployment into a production like environment, then I should be able to do some automated way where everything is set up and available and you can go ahead with your actual deployment. Now, when you are talking about all these things, there will be something that you want to configure for that, right? See, installing a software is different, but for your software to come up, it might require some network configuration, it might require to connect to a database, or there might be a load balancer available, some authentication you have to do. So those things are what we call it as configuration. So we should be able to do that also in a better way. And now finally, it's not just about doing all those things, because if I say, if I installed or deployed my software, configured it, and it is up and running, for that whatever automation I have to do, I have done. But we also have to focus on monitoring, because if everything is working fine is okay, but at some point of time if there is an issue, then it will cause outage, right? So that is where now whatever that work you are trying to do, you should also monitor. So now if you are going to be a developer or QA, and if you are saying that, okay, I am not actually going to deploy into production, but for doing my continuous development or continuous integration, there might be some small tools which I will be using in the development or QA machines. So can you monitor them? Why do you need someone else to monitor, right? The same way, if I'm doing deployment, I should be able to monitor whatever that I'm deploying. So I'm not talking still about the whole infrastructure or the machine. Okay, because monitoring is not only for system admins or network admins. We should be able to monitor whatever that we are now going to handle. So that's where DevOps talks about. So now if you look at each area, there is some involvement directly in one engineer, and there will be another engineer who is going to also focus on that. So continuous development doesn't mean only writing code. You need to write code, you need to have a release planning, and it also involves how do you do build. So now for continuous development setup, I need release managers, I need programmer, and I need a build engineer to work together. So this is where a single person can also do all those things. So that's how you increase your responsibility. Continuous testing doesn't mean that you will just do testing continuously. For doing a testing, you need to focus on getting a machine, and in that machine, how do you configure everything? So you need to now work closely with the deployment and with the continuous integration. So that way, for testing, you need to know the build and you need to get the machines properly. So that way now, being a QA engineer, you can do more work on build by yourself and deploy by yourself. The same way, if you're going to be a system admin, you need to think about continuously monitoring. That way you will monitor each and every machine and application it is going to there. And how is that you can focus on configuring everything automatically, which is needed for a deployment work or a testing work or a development work, or even sometimes you will do some demo. For that, can you do some automated way of configuring everything, or you should talk about taking backups and everything, right? So those what we call it as configuration management. And deployment, given a chance, I should be able to automate everything in deployment, so that just by one click of a button we can deploy our complete product. So who can take? Now anyone can do this, right? So these are the areas which an organization wants us to implement. So that's where any one of us can start doing all those things, provided you know what are the input and output for each one of them. So this is where now these are like, again, if I say I have a maid, I will divide it into three categories: cooking, cleaning, and washing, right? So it doesn't mean that you should be doing all the three. The more and more that you know is going to be beneficial for you, so that you can start going into a place where you can get a better salary or a better profile, right? That's exactly what an organization is expecting. Now all these things are needed by an organization. Now it's mandatory for us to have a knowledge on all these things, and we need to be aware of this, so that if you're expecting a good profile, you should be in a position to tell, hey, I am already working as one engineer, that is there, but in addition to that, I can also help in continuous development or testing or integration or deployment or monitoring. So for that, what is the best practice you should be aware of? Okay. And now finally comes the point is, how are you going to work on the best practice? So first you should know what is the best practice available in the market, which will help to solve some problem. Because by knowing one best practice, you are not going to solve the complete SDLC. Like I said, there are different areas where you need to know some best practice that will help one or two people who are working in it. So that way, the more and more best practices you know, it will be better for you, because for a complete SDLC, we need to achieve all those things. Now, how will you achieve? That is where tools are there. Okay, there are plenty of tools. So now, if I give you the responsibility of implementing continuous development, then you should be aware of agile methodologies. And in the agile, there are tools like Jira or Confluence that you should be using. And then you should be using things like Perforce or Git or Bitbucket. So that is more about continuous development. And then if I say, okay, there is continuous development already being done, I want you to help with continuous integration. Then you need to focus on doing build management. So that's where tools like Maven or Gradle will come. And then you will have Jenkins or Cucumber, right? So that way you will be having tools for that. Then if I ask you to do continuous testing, then you're going to think about using Selenium or any other supporting tool by which you can do that. Now further, if I ask you to do deployment, then in order to achieve deployment, there are tools like Docker which will help you. But again, when you say deployment, there is also something called orchestration of that. Then comes Swarm or Kubernetes. So by using this, you will be able to implement continuous deployment and manage. And then if I talk about configuration management, then earlier we used to have tools like Chef or Puppet, and now we have tool like Ansible or Tower. So using that, you will be able to do the configuration management better. And then if I talk about continuous monitoring, earlier we were using tools like Nagios, but now typically we are going to use a tool like Splunk or Prometheus, where I'm not going to just monitor all the tools whatever I was talking, but I can also monitor my containers. Okay, so that's where there is a process and a tool related. Now finally, I was not talking about one of the other important areas, which is cloud. Now this is typically for system admins. Now so far, if you are using physical machine or virtual machine, now think about having machines on the internet, which is cloud. So now if your organization is moving towards cloud, and if you are going to take care of the administration of those machines, then there are service providers like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. So this is where now you can understand, in order to implement the best practices available in DevOps, there are certain tools which are available. And for a company, each best practice is needed. And in each best practice, there is a tool they're going to use. So that is where in a company, they will be using all the tools, whatever that we are talking about, but under different best practices. Okay. So now finally, if you come, it is not DevOps with respect to one person. So in a company, ideally, if you see, one person himself cannot call as a DevOps, wherein all the rest of idiots, that's not going to happen. Okay. If a company says that we want to move from traditional way of working towards the DevOps way, then each and every one of us have to focus. But the point now comes is, I was talking about all the best practices, right? Continuous development, continuous integration, testing, and then continuous deployment, configuration management, and then still we have monitoring, infrastructure as a code. It keeps going on. Now, can everyone do it? No. So that is where, from a higher level, if you are ready to work in this culture under the DevOps, there are certain categories which they have put it up. So now first understand, if you are going to work on the DevOps role, it is not that you will be doing this. You should be already working on any one of the side in development group or operation group. And in addition to that, you are going to take this role, because for you to work in DevOps, primarily you should have been an engineer and working on any one of the side. And in addition to that, you are taking more responsibilities. Okay. So as you can see here, these are the work or the responsibilities which you will be taking in addition to your existing work. Okay. So now what is that? The first one talks about agile. Now this is where, now if you say that you are a program engineer, now you will say, hey, I am a release manager or a program engineer, I never deal with tooling, but still now you will have the responsibility of driving everything in an agile way. Okay. So that is where things like Scrum Master will come into the picture, and those people will be ensuring that the whole organization, whatever they are developing and testing, they will be working in agile. So that way now you should be aware of the processes, how it works, and majorly you're going to focus on agile development or agile implementation. Okay. Yeah, I'll come to it. The next one is CI/CD. So now, what does CI/CD talks about? So typically, if you are going to take responsibility wherein you are focusing on only continuous development, continuous integration, and continuous testing and continuous delivery. Okay. If you are going to take care of these areas, or if you are ready to implement these areas, then your DevOps role will be giving this. Okay. So this is one of the work where your responsibilities will be only to handle the continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, and continuous development. So you're going to focus only on that. Now, there is another area where we call it as cloud administration. Now, this is where, now if you're already a admin, a system admin, if you want, you can start taking care of the cloud administration. So instead of taking care of the virtual machine, you are going to take care of the machines which is available on the cloud, which could be like a AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. So now what will be your responsibility? You will have to take care of the administration, and you will be taking care of the infrastructure or networking which is available on the cloud. So like how you were doing on the virtual machine, you are going to take care of everything which is available on the cloud. So this is one kind of role which they are going to give. The next kind of role what they will have is SRE. Now what is SRE talks about? Now SRE, this was typically created in some of the organizations like LinkedIn and Facebook. That is, you are going to be a cloud administrator. Okay, SRE means cloud administrator. But along with cloud administrator, you should be ready to also do some development work which will create some new tools which is needed for you, because there will be so much of infrastructure that you have to maintain. Just by looking at the machines and taking care of the machines will not be sufficient. You should be thinking about how you can scale, thousands and thousands of users who is going to come. How are you going to help them in keeping the infrastructure always good? So that is where SRE talks more about continuous monitoring of your complete infrastructure and cloud infra management. And also along with that, how is that you're going to do development so that you can create your own dashboard, or you can think of doing metrics which is needed for a company to talk about. So this is another profile where companies are expecting under DevOps. And the last one is tooling. Now, tooling is so generic where for any of the additional improvement that I have, which doesn't fit in any of the phases that I was talking about, that is continuous integration, continuous deployment, or configuration management. If there is anything beyond it, you should be still ready to try to create a new tool by yourself. So this is where you can use Java, you can use Python, or you can use Node.js, right? And you should be able to develop things by yourself. So now if you look at, these are the roles what company is expecting, okay? And now in this, now SRE represents site reliability engineer, okay? Yes, so it's more about tooling means you can have your own tool. So now if you think in a company under the umbrella of DevOps, these are the roles that you are going to get. Now, what does these talk? This talks about, if you go to the previous slide, implementing any one of this. So this is where there are roles which talks about more than one best practice that you see here, and put together they are giving a role. So now you have lot of opportunities where you can choose to become any one of this depending on what you know and what is that the company expecting. So finally, now what comes to the point, which is that you have to learn. Now that is the point where we are not in a position to tell, because every company has a combination of these roles. Okay, I'm just putting it in a higher level, but sometime if you go to a company, you will be a CI/CD guy, but still they will ask, can you do at least something in cloud, wherein I don't want you become an administrator, but do you know some basics of cloud? Can you do monitoring by yourself? Can you also do configuration management? The same way, if you are going to be a cloud administrator, they will say your work on cloud administration is only 50%, but still I want you to do something in CI/CD. Can you help in deployment? Can you set up a release process, right? So that is where they are going to mix little bit here and there. So now it's quite important for you to understand is what are the complete best practices available, which is nothing but these. So if you are aware of everything, then you have the complete freedom of choosing which kind of role that you want to get in, wherein depending on the tool in the area that I was talking about, you can get in deeper. So this is how you should be focusing on how to become a DevOps engineer. Okay, so now to talk about the point. So okay, now I am a administrator, I am a QA engineer, I am a storage person. How will I become a DevOps engineer? So the question now, again to answer from a higher level is, you might be already working in the operation group or the development group, right? So you're already working in any one of them. Now in that, you should first focus on automating your current work. See, like I said, a maid, right? The same way, if you are already doing some work, if you are taking 8 hours for only that, how will you do more thing? So that is where what is needed now. The first thing is you should be automating whatever your current profile is. So whether you are a system admin, whether you are a network admin or a QA or a developer, see what are the tools that you can use to automate your current work. And once you have done, definitely you will have a lot of time. Then you should think what are the next things around it, because everything is a pipeline, right? So if you talk about system admin, being a system admin, what are the things you can do? You can become a cloud admin. Okay, so you can think about learning cloud. In addition to that, now you can also do deployments. So that is where it's better you learn Docker or Kubernetes. And along with it, you should also know configuration management so that you can create the infrastructure and you are going to deploy on top of that. But as soon as you finish this, then you can also take care of CI/CD. But the point here is you should take the best practices which is very close to infrastructure, because if you are working in the operation group, there are a lot of best practices that you should first focus, right? So if you are an admin, I will say first focus on continuous deployment, configuration management, continuous monitoring, and there is something called as infrastructure as a code. Now this is what is directly related to you. So first, if you know this, then I would say that you can go ahead and do others. Then once you know all these things, then you can jump into CI/CD. Same way, if you are in the development group, your first focus should be CI/CD, because that is related to your SDLC, right? So that way you should focus on continuous development, continuous testing, and continuous integration. Now once this is done, next you should focus on how do you deploy, that is continuous deployment, and then how do you configure all of them, how do you use monitoring. So that is how you should be moving ahead. So start with your current profile and see what are the things related to it, and from that you should get into the next level. So the whole point here is, now if you are going out in the market, if you say that you know all the areas of the DevOps best practice, then you will be ready to fit into any one of the role that I was talking about. But depending on how many things you know, you will be fitting only to one or two profile. So that's the problem. What happens is, now you guys say that, hey, I have put this tool, but no company is calling, I am not going in, because you're not understanding what is the role's expectation. So now go back, and if you see the roles and responsibilities they have, there will be a pattern which is around it. So that is what you need to understand, what are the things around it. So based on that, you should go. So now, preferably, to put it in a simple way, the more and more best practices you know, and more tools in it if you know, you will be able to keep yourself as not just or not just to fit one role of DevOps. You should say that I'm able to fit all the roles. You give me whatever you want, I'm going to work. So that's where the way that you should be focusing is this. Okay, so now the particular guidance that I'm giving is, whether you are a fresher or an experienced person, now if you want to get into DevOps, the basic expectation is you should be good in Linux. Okay, and you should be knowing at least some basic scripting like shell scripting, and you are good with the basic concepts of agile. Okay, so now in this, what you are going to do is start implementing the best practices which is needed, like CI/CD. Now post that, you should focus about continuous deployment, configuration management, okay, and then focus about monitoring. All right, yes. And finally, with all those things, now what is that you are going to do? Still, when I was talking about tooling, that's where Python comes into the picture. So now if you have learned all those things, think about having Python scripting, which will help you to focus on doing things better. So this is a generic workflow or the path where every one of us should be learning. Okay, and now finally comes to the point, there are some people who will say that, okay, now I am an admin, I want to focus only on AWS. So this is where, if you are focusing on becoming a AWS administrator alone, then the path is you should be knowing the basics of network and system administration, and then you should be choosing your level wherein you will first become an associate, either in the solution side, or you're going to become as an sysops or a operation side, and then you're going to get yourself certified as a professional. So this is where, try to think what are the areas that you fit in and how do you get. But if you are a fresher, you don't have a choice, you kind of have to know all of them, wherein whether you want to get deeper into the administration like AWS or Python is second. So first, learn Linux, learn scripting, that is mandatory for everyone, and then depending on whether you fit in the development group or operation group, try to learn accordingly. If you are in the development group, focus more on CI/CD, and once it is done, then focus on continuous deployment, and then configuration management, and you're going to focus on infrastructure or monitoring. The same way, if you are into the operation side, immediately you should focus on monitoring, you should focus on continuous deployment and configuration management, and then infrastructure as a code. Now, once you have done, then move into the next part, which is CI/CD, which talks about agile, which talks about development and integration. Getting it?
Yes.
Yes, Adam.
Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Adam, hi, Deepak here. Could you also guide us about if anyone is Windows system engineer, so how can we cope up? Do we have any options like I mean like go into AWS directly without any Linux background or so?
Okay, see, again, I'm telling it in generic. Okay, so if you are a Windows engineer, so you fit into operations group, right? Now, what are the things that you can do on Windows to automate? So this is where we have something called as configuration management. So now, whether I give you a Linux or a Windows machine, you should be still able to configure automatically, right? You should be able to do upgrades. So this is where there are tools like Ansible which will help you. So now you should say, okay, using Ansible, I managed my Windows machine for upgrades or restarts or latest backups that I wanted to do. That is the first one. Now, this doesn't talk about what kind of service that you're using. You give me a machine, I'm going to take care. That is one. Second, you are going to do deployments. So you can say that being an administrator on Windows, I also helped in my company in doing deployment using Docker and Kubernetes. Again, I'm not talking about what type of machine you are using, but now if you say you were able to do deployment, you were able to do configuration, it is adding more value to your current profile, because as a Windows admin, still you are going to do. The next point comes is, okay, now tell me what kind of service that you used to do that. Was it on a virtual machine or something else? So this is where, if you are going to tell a virtual machine, whatever you are doing, on top of that, you can use Ansible, Docker, and Kubernetes. But if you say you have used cloud, and in the cloud also have you taken care of Windows machine, then ideally companies will be going towards Azure. Okay, if your current company is using Windows based VM, and if they are focusing to move the same Windows on cloud, then they will go into Azure. But if you are going to plan saying that, okay, I was taking care of my Windows on VM, but now my company's infrastructure has moved to Linux, then definitely if it is on the cloud, then it will be AWS. So that is where you need to now know that from a Windows admin, what are the things that you took care, and then you moved into a administrator, which is on Windows or Linux. So if you say that it was on cloud, then if it is Windows, then you should call yourself as a Azure administrator, or if you move towards Linux, then it is going to be AWS. Now in that also, is your work, if you say have I taken care of the administration part, or you should say, hey, there was another admin, but I was taking care of the tooling on top of it. So that way, if you are aware about Azure or AWS services which is needed for your automation, it will be easy. So that's where you should be defining your profile. So with your existing profile, learn continuous deployment, configuration management, and infrastructure as a code and monitoring. It doesn't matter with what kind of AWS or Azure you are using. The next work on top of it, if you say, hey, along with it, I have also done the administration, then you need to choose. Getting it?
Yep, Adam. Thanks.